It's hard to believe that we are already halfway through this season of The Ones Who Live, and it was a big episode. We got a bunch of little lore nuggets sprinkled throughout the episode about what the CRM is about, the biggest military in the Walking Dead universe, and we get to see a little bit of their plans, and most of the episode is about Rick and Michonne trying to escape, and the tension between them that results from that. And it was a fantastic episode. You really feel like the CRM is an actual military, a big operation, more powerful than Rick and Michonne have ever seen before, and they can't just snap their fingers and make the problem go away. And it really feels in dialogue like there's actual weight to the military, there's a chain of command, and things actually matter, and that is very refreshing to see in the Walking Dead universe. So this episode, to me, is one of the best yet, and I'm really excited. It feels like there's so much more story to go. That's why I'm surprised. We're already halfway through it. We need a season 2, man. I can't have this show end without seeing more of the information. So that's my opinion on this episode, guys. We're going to break into the breakdown. I'm loving this show. Let me know what you guys think below. So we start off the episode getting a little peek inside the city. They've got this marketplace set up, and we see that there's different stalls with all different types of food, and we got french fries, we got onion rings. It's actually a real civilization inside Philadelphia. So I think everything looks pristine. We got, electricity. You can see street lights in the background, all types of things. So it is a proper society. In the same, we got similar scenes in the original show with the Commonwealth. So we've seen this type of thing before. So I think that this first scene, that is kind of a sideshow. The main thing is the backstory of Jadis and Rick in the CRM. So basically, we don't really get anything that new in this scene. Basically, Jadis talks about how she met with the CRM and they exchanged people, either threats or leaders or whatever. So A's or B's, she would give them to the CRM. And then she was allowed to skip the consignee process and go straight to the CRM military. And that's how she got in the position that she's in. So that is just a prelude. And basically this scene is just this contrast with later when Jadis is very different. She's got a different haircut and she's a lot more brutal and she directly threatens Rick's family. She doesn't say anything here about Rick trying to escape in this first scene, so he still has it in his mind that he can escape, even though obviously he finds out that he really can't escape later on. So that's really the point of this scene. And I think it's a great kind of before and after with this next scene here. So this next scene was a bit of a surprise. And this shows how Rick was able to get Michonne into the CRM. He basically told Thorne that he wanted her to request that this person be made a consignee, despite the fact that obviously Michonne shows signs of being an A, being a leader. So Rick just wanted to make sure, so he leveraged his relationship with Thorne to make that happen. So now Michonne is both reflective of Thorne and Rick, so they are both all in bed together as a result of that. So Okafor's death is looming over this scene. Thorne is still crying as a result of that whole situation. So this must have been right after he got back. She just got the news when he's having this conversation with her. So a lot of things happen with Thorne in this episode. She obviously gets promoted. She's a lot higher up in the CRM now. So this scene was a surprise, but it makes perfect sense, I think, to show that right before this. Just small nitpick. I don't like they overuse the titles a bit much, but in this case, I think it makes sense because of how much time jumping there is in the show so far. But I don't know that I needed that because, it was context clues, but that's just a little nitpick, personal thing. And then we end that part, and now we are with the ending of the previous episode with Jadis and Rick in the room together, and basically Jada says, you can't kill me because I got all the information about the Commonwealth. Well, not the Commonwealth, right? But Alexandria and everybody living there, and Judith and all of them. So that is the threat, that he can't even kill her right now because she has that stuff in a file. Now, she made it sound like it was quartered away in her living place, that the CRM would find it after she died. So my first thought was, just kill her right now, run to her apartment. She probably got her key in her pocket, and then just break in, take the shit. Well, I don't know. That's beside the point. I get what they're going for. But that was my first thought, is there's got to be a way around it, right? Rick, just do it now. Just do it now. But I love the tension in the scene. And you really see Rick's really fighting, but he's just stuck between a rock and a hard place, and he just can't fix the situation like how he wants to. He's basically a reined-in animal. You can see he's pacing back and forth, the energy, that the rage that's building inside him that he has to suppress and press down. And you kind of feel that throughout this episode. He has all these things he wants to do, but they are all withheld. So I think that that's just really a brilliant take for this episode with Rick's character, and it's going to be really satisfying to see that unleashed as this season goes on. I'm sure he's going to eventually get to the breaking point where he's like, fuck it, we got to take the risk, and we're making a break for it. But yeah, I think that this was a great scene here. Lots of tension, love it, and I still love this intro theme song. And now we got Michonne working in the culling facility, the zombies coming together, and one of the themes of this section is Michonne is doing voiceovers with letters to Judith and describing what happens. It kind of is just a mood setter. You know, it's not necessarily a requirement for, you know, in the opening episode we had Rick do the same thing, and it was a way of giving us exposition while also being a tone setter. So, you know, they could have easily taken the voiceovers out, but I'm glad it's in there because it gives us a little more insight into Michonne, because she doesn't talk as much in this episode as you might think based on her screen time. She's kind of obviously not even herself, right? She's pretending to be somebody else. She's Dana in this episode. So I do appreciate having the voiceovers in there. And here, Michonne's talking to one of her fellow consignees, and the consignee's like, you know what you're doing, you're killing zombies, and there's a situation where one of the supposedly dead zombies gets back up, and then Michonne has to fight it off, and we have some fun zombie gags in this episode. They've kind of withheld that a little bit, but I'm glad that they're still sprinkling in some new zombie stuff. And Michonne stabs it in the head, rips the head off, and then throws it at another zombie to protect this person here. So I love that. But obviously, this happening puts Michonne on their radar in a way that she really shouldn't be right now. She should be trying to be a follower, a bee. She shouldn't be somebody taking this much charge. So I think it makes sense, based on how the episode goes later, that this scene is in here. So I think that this is a great opening scene. Always good to have zombie gags. And then we cut to Okafor's funeral, and this was a fantastic scene. Part of me would like to see more Major Beale scenes, but I understand withholding him makes sense, and that's the delicate balance they play with this show. They don't want to just do exposition dumps, because if you take away all the mystery, the allure of the CRM goes away. And that's why we're only getting little bits of information at a time, and it alludes to bigger things without necessarily completely unmasking it. And it's a delicate balance, and the primary function of The Walking Dead as a show is to be a human drama about the human condition. So we're focusing on the characters and their relationships, but we sprinkle in a little bit of background information, a little bit of lore. And I love this scene for that. We find out that they have names for battles in their history of the CRM. He's got the Battle of Fittler Square, and he's got a sword that belonged to a general from the Revolutionary War. And so we get this connection with American history, and that's when it clicked for me that we are in Philadelphia, which is the birthplace of the American Republic, which makes perfect sense for this group that wants to restart civilization, that they would also be in Philadelphia. And they even got the Pennsylvania flag in the background. So I think that that's pretty dope, and I love that this sword has history. Of course, in Philadelphia, they also have all these history museums and stuff, so I wonder, I'm sure it probably is a real sword. I don't know if it's a replica. That would be awesome if it was. Love sprinkling in a little bit of history. They did that a lot with the France show with Daryl Dixon. They have historical aspects to that show. I love tying in background history, real life history with this show. Gives it a lot more texture. But also in this scene, he's talking about how Okafor sacrificed his wife because he bombed when he wasn't supposed to. The only thing that was a little confusing was I thought Okafor was saying earlier that they didn't bomb the city. It was animalistic to bomb the city, so he bombed somewhere else. I'm a little confused about that. I'm sure if I rewatch it, I can figure that out, but it's a little bit contradictory almost. So I don't know. But I love that opening scene. I think it's great. There's the small nitpick of like everybody we know is within a few feet of Rick. And it's just like we want to have this massive military, right? But I get that we want to have everybody on camera together, but it almost feels like they should be more scattered to make it have the illusion of being a little bit bigger than it is. Obviously we're on television, so we can't have thousands of extras, there's a limit. But that's cool, I still appreciate it. But yeah, now we're talking about Okafor and how Thorne and him met and that she shot at him, and Okafor still pushed on and encouraged her to come. Information we already knew, but getting a little bit more perspective on it from her point of view. And then we meet with Major Beale here, and Major Beale gives Rick a book, this same martial arts book that he gave to Okafor, and he kind of talked about how there's this dichotomy between the two of them where he trusts Thorne more, and he doesn't know Okafor is the guy who persuaded him to leave Rick and Thorne and not make them A's, zombie experiment people. So his death leaves it open-ended, what's going to happen next. And I think giving this book is a gesture of, you could eventually work to gain my trust like Okafor, but Thorne is on board. Even though in that conversation, she wonders if she was right the first time when she was going to try to kill Okafor. She wonders if she was right to do that, kind of questioning. And you see in Rick, there's like, he acknowledges the doubt that she has, and he's like, maybe I can work with that. But then this happens, and it changes that. So she goes off in a car with Major Beale and gets shown something. And there's this special briefing that she gets where you get the big picture plan of what's going on. And in the first scene with Jadis, we got it hinted at that the CRM has a 500-year plan. They want to wipe out all the zombies, and they want to restart civilization. So, and we also get in that first scene that the CRM is not supposed to operate within the city. Now, I'm sure they've got their own like spies, and they're trying to run things as well. But we got some of that information in World Beyond with the charter, where it was a military operation and basically martial law for 10 years. And then now we're past that. So now it's, now it's civilian led. So it would be interesting to get into a little bit of that, but I'm more interested in the military than I am in the civilian side of things. So I love that we're focusing on that instead. That's where the story is, from my point of view, is the military and their operations and their world conquering. That's way more interesting than getting inside the city. Even though we get a little bit of the view of the marketplace, that's cool, but civilian life is probably just pretty normal, so we don't necessarily need to see a ton of that. So here we got a great scene with Thorne, and Thorne talks about how she got the special briefing, and she is more on board now. She gets it, and later in the episode, she's like, I don't agree with Okafor on everything. So Okafor's idea that they need good people on the inside to do more good things. So it sounds like she's a little bit more on the CRM side than Okafor was, and he wanted to change things and have more pacifist influence. He put the art of peace, he gave it to them. So he wanted to have a more of a soft touch. Sounds like Thorne is a little bit more on board with being more aggressive. So we will have to see how that shakes out. But I think that creates an interesting dynamic. And when she was just doubting it before, she saw we're getting the before and after, which is smart writing because this thing is so significant that it changed her from being a little bit doubtful, being on board with Okafor. He just died. This pain is still fresh from him being killed. She takes that and then is shown something so significant that she's on the other side now. So we have to wonder what that is. It has to be something huge, and it has to be more than it has to be some sort of looming threat. I mean, we can make a video speculating on what it might be. I'm very interested in seeing people's theories on what it might be. I don't even know if we're going to get this season. We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's really good writing here, a before and after, and then she leaves. And basically, Rick's can't really trust her, now that she's more on the CRM side. And he's devising a plan here for escape, but we find out he doesn't want to escape with Michonne. He wants Michonne to escape on her own. So he passes a note to her, and I love this scene here. It feels great. And Rick finds a zombie that has a note that says, "Tell them I'm sorry I lied," or something, which is, of course, symbolic of what Rick is doing in this scene. So he's lying to Michonne, making her think that they're going to escape together. And he cleared the way in the tunnels. And then I like that these are intercut, and we even have Rick, cordoning off the zombies here. And we got disruption charges going off. That's something that's increasing lately. So we have to wonder what they're really bombing. They're saying they're disruption charges. Who knows? We had that concept in World Beyond as well. They drop bombs to lure hordes different places. So I think that is a fun concept, and it definitely makes sense. And after with the tunnels, we have Rick on the shoreline, and he does something, and then he disappears. We have a fantastic zombie gag of this turnstile, and this guy's body gets eviscerated by the turnstile. Awesome. One of the best zombie gags they've done in a long time, and I love that they still find excuses to sprinkle these in, even though it's definitely not as important to the story as it used to be. The zombie action is not as central to this one because we're doing such a big scale story. They have to remember to sprinkle that in. They got to remind us it's a zombie show. And I think that they did that in a fantastic way in that part. Michonne gets to the shoreline. She sees a zombie that has a consignee jacket on him. And I think it was Rick's. We saw him pull his consignee jacket out of his bag. So he puts it on this zombie, tears the face off. So this is supposed to be Michonne, so she can get away. They need to think that she's dead. And then there is a boat there and a letter that says, "You're leaving without me. If you love me, you'll go." And then Rick basically fulfilling his side of the bargain. And he's like making a deal with Jadis, another deal, where he's like, "I'll stay. She escaped. You need to be on the one investigating when they find the body, and you need to go looking for her and just say that she's dead and that I'll stay so you can do that." So I think that this definitely is interesting, that Jadis doesn't just go against Rick, but obviously in the same way Michonne is reflective of Thorne in this episode, Rick is reflective on Jadis. So there's definitely a mutual benefit into working together. So I think it's really good writing in this episode. Really great directing as well. Michael Slobis, the DP from Breaking Bad, he shot most of the episodes and directed some of the episodes, and he's directed Game of Thrones, and he's directed Walking Dead before. Just great to see, imaginative cinematography in this episode and lots of montage-y stuff. So he did a great job with this episode as well. Now we have a conversation, one-sided conversation, with Rick and Michonne, where Rick basically explains how he can't leave, and she needed to go, and he is not really getting through to her. She's really mad. She is not finding that acceptable, and she doesn't really, I think, get the full picture of what's going on yet, and that is definitely a sad thing. And we basically get a breakup by the end of the episode. So it gets even worse. Now we got Michonne on her first orientation walking through the marketplace, which I think it's another reason it was smart to have that opening scene so that we can establish this idea that, they dangle the consignees with the city. They're having an incentive. They design their society around having an incentive. They don't want to have people inside until they know they can trust them to be loyal. And they also just want to have it as an incentive, so you work harder, so you appreciate it when you do get in there. So that I think is a smart concept. And here we got a new character, Ben Gyro, and it turns out that he drew the phones. So he has all these old devices, phones and TVs. Now TVs, we've seen them use, so it does feel wasteful to be drawing on them, but maybe they're just, going to go in the trash. There's something wrong with them, the bulb's not working, etc. But I love these drawings, and it was always weird to me if Rick was the one who did it, so I didn't think that was the case. It didn't make sense in the Japanese writing. And he knows Michonne's name, and Benjiro, I think, is an interesting character. I'm curious to see where that goes. He's somebody who knows Rick's past. Rick did not let that mask down for pretty much anybody except for that guy, apparently. So, those drawings are very significant, and I'm curious to see how that goes in the future. And she even lets Rick know that she found that booth in this scene here, where she's called over to Thorn, and basically they have a new mission. But we go back to where Okafor took Rick and Thorn in the first episode, and they basically, Thorn is taking charge, and she wants Michonne on board with the new plan, but she is not the same as Okafor. So she doesn't want to make the CRM more peaceful. She just wants to have somebody loyal to her, maybe. It's an open question of what her motivation is in this scene. And there's a point in the scene where she draws the knife. She, at her back, draws a knife. Now, my theory on that part is that she doesn't actually want to attack Michonne. She's asking Michonne a question about, if she knew the truth of the operation. If she got this briefing that Thorn got, would she want to know the information? So that's not the real test. Obviously, who would say no to that? Unless you want to be a bee, I suppose. If you're a bee and you're a follower, you're like, I don't need the bigger picture. I just need to know what I'm supposed to do, I guess is one answer. But I think most people would be curious and want to know what the answer is. So I'd say, sure, why not? But I don't think that's the real test. I think the real test is Thorn pulling the knife out, and only Rick can see it. And she's testing him to see what he does in this situation, to see how important Dana is to him. So the real test is not for Michonne, it's for Rick. And Rick draws his sidearm, basically failing the test. And then Thorn brings that up, and he says, I was just doing that to back you up. I saw you drawing your knife, so I was going to back you up. And obviously we know that's not the case. Rick was ready to pull the trigger on her. So, it's plausible what he says, but I'm pretty sure that he has failed Thorn's test and she doesn't really trust him, which makes you wonder why she takes him on this mission. Maybe this is another test for them. I don't know. I have to wonder what her motivation is here. Maybe it's like keep your enemies close type of thing. So maybe out of the CRM city limits, they're going all the way across the country. In this helicopter, so that's a long ride. They say they're going to the Cascades. At first, she mentions a university that they're going to. I first thought of the university in a World Beyond that was in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska. They mention the Cascade Mountains later. Those are on the West Coast, so it's not the same as the World Beyond. I think a lot of people are probably going to assume that based on that university line, but that is not actually the case. So we're at a different university. But they mentioned that they have 5 fuel spots where they land at to refuel, because that's a long ride going all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. So they have depots all throughout the country that are just for the helicopters. And there's a point where Michonne gets a button that she can push to bring the helicopters to her. It's like a geolocator thing. And it looks like they have enough, a fleet of helicopters big enough that they always seem to have helicopters around. Or maybe it's just this specific area because they have some sort of operation here. Some scientist thing is going on. They got to clear zombies. That's what we're doing. And I love this little scene here. It really does sound like a military. And they're all saying, yes, ma'am. Michonne's looking at Rick like, how are you on board with this? You know, she's not really in the military mindset at this point. Even though in the Alexandria, she was basically the military leader. She was the defense leader. I forget what title they gave her, but she was in charge of that in like season 9 and stuff. So I find that interesting that she's not on board, but of course she knows the evil of what the CRM does. But I love this scene here. The way they're speaking, it actually sounds like a military operation. And we got these pneumatic rifles. So these air rifles that shoot holes into zombies. Pretty cool. It sounds like No Country for Old Men. The killer in that movie and book uses a pneumatic rifle. So I think that that's pretty cool. They don't want to draw any more of them, so they're using quiet weapons. And they have this cart thing. I forget the name of it, but it's like a plow that they use, and it gets stuck in the mud, and Michonne and Rick push it themselves, and they're not supposed to. Thorne was supposed to do it, so they take the point, and then they push it, and then it sets off an alarm, and then it explodes. Really cool, interesting device. So I love this scene. I love the fog of it, and then Rick and Michonne get away, and just the adrenaline is running, and they have a moment, and they kiss and stuff. And, you know, this is right before Rick is like, we can't do this anymore type of thing. So, and then we got a scene here with Thorne basically being Shane from the second or first season actually had this scene with Thorne having Michonne in the sights because Michonne is definitely going to jeopardize her goals here. And Rick sees it, and he puts a stop to it by putting himself in the way, and she can't really get away with it. And we get to see Rick using his hand stabby thing, which is awesome. The only nitpick I have with that is if you attach a knife to your hand, and then the knife gets stuck inside the zombie, you're definitely going to have some problems. So that's the only thing that doesn't make sense. Aaron's mace made a lot more sense with that, because, you know, it still could get stuck, but not as much as like a piercing instrument. He's like pummeling it, you know, it's a little different. So that's a little nitpick, but it's cool enough. They could fix it if they have like a button that he presses to detach it in case of that. That's something in design that I would want to have in there. But we don't necessarily need to get into that. That's just me overanalyzing, as I'm prone to do. And here Thorne is very upset about them going against orders. They have a chain of command. That's what creates order. And then we got Jadis in this scene, and she is now in charge of this operation, it sounds like. So I find that interesting. And this is where Michonne, she sees Jadis. And now she might understand a little bit more about how desperate their situation is, because Jadis obviously knows, she knows that she knows, etc. So that is definitely a big moment in the episode. And here is the point where Rick, it's basically a breakup. He's like, this is it, it's over, you're gonna leave, and that's that. We can't, what we had is broken because of the situation that they're in. So it's a very sad scene to see. And then we got the big moment at the end of the episode. A helicopter in the storm doesn't seem too smart to do, honestly. But then Michonne makes a crazy decision that she is going to unbuckle her seatbelt, and she and Rick are going to get thrown out of the helicopter. Now, I have to wonder if Rick could have fought back, you know, but maybe he was taken by surprise. But wasn't he buckled into? I'd have to watch it again to really see. Either way, it's an awesome scene, and it forces them into a situation where they have to work together, and they have to make some big choices in the next episode. So it's going to be an insane episode. I'm looking forward to it. And with that, definitely let me know your theories about what is the big briefing? What are they learning in that? what do you think is coming up? And next episode is actually written by Michonne herself, Denai Guerrera. So I'm curious to see how she does with her own script in this episode. So really look forward to next week. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.